Hello again. We're continuing our video series for BA310, Ethics in the Workplace. My name is Michael Scharf, and I'm likely not the professor for your class. So if you do have any questions about the content that we go over in these video lectures, please contact the professor that you have for your specific class. In this video, we're going to go over Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 is really an introduction to normative theories of ethics. And what normative theories really means is that there is some norm or some rule that we can follow, and if we follow it, allegedly we're going to come up with an ethical decision. So unlike relativism that we went over in Chapter 1 or justice that we'll go over in Chapter 3, all of the theories within this chapter have some rule that if we follow it, and we're going to come up with an ethical decision. So really in this chapter, it identifies two different types of normative theories. The first one is teleological theories, and the other is deontological theories. Teleological theories are, or consequentialist theories, are that the rule is that we're going to take a look at the consequences of our act, and we are going to base whether something is ethical or unethical based on the consequences. The tough thing about this one is we're not going to look at the act itself. We're going to look at the results or the projected results of the act. The opposite is true of deontological theories. On deontological theories, we're going to look, there's going to be a rule that we're going to go over in the next video, that there's some rule that if we follow it, that the act itself is either ethical or unethical. So these two theories are kind of the opposite of one another, where teleological or consequentialist, we're not gonna evaluate the act at all. We're gonna only take a look at the consequences of those acts, whereas deontological approaches, we're only gonna look at the act itself, not the consequences of it. We can probably all think of situations where we did the wrong thing, but a good outcome came, and that would be more on the consequentialist side. Or we did the right thing and something bad happened because we did the right thing at the time, and that would be a more deontological approach. So within this, there's kind of an experiment. It's called the trolley experiment. It's been around since the 60s. But it kind of highlights the difference between these two theories. And in the first part of this experiment, you have a trolley or a train that's going down the track, and you have 5 individuals on the track. And you don't have a phone or any way to contact the people in this experiment, but you are standing by a lever. And what you can do is you can either do nothing and the train goes forward and hits the 5 people and kills them, or you can pull the lever and it will divert the train to only hit 1 person. And really, the question is, what would you do and why? And really, you can take a second and pause this video and maybe take a second to decide what you would do and restart the video. So now that you've decided what you're going to do, most people say that they would pull the lever. And when you go around and ask them why would you pull the lever, they use a more teleological approach. They say, well, by pulling the lever, we're not going to look at the ethics of pulling or not pulling the lever. We are just really looking at the outcome, that killing 5 people is worse than killing 1 person, which is really a consequentialist theory. You're basing your act and the rightness or wrongness of your act based on the consequences, not the act itself. I will say, for those of you who didn't decide to do that, there are a minority of people that usually say, well, it would be wrong to pull the lever and kill the 1 person, and therefore I'm not going to do anything. And in that case, it's more of a deontological theory or approach that they're using, that the act of pulling the lever, even though it only kills 1 person, would be wrong. But the vast majority of people usually pick to pull the lever and use a more teleological approach.
Now, there is a second part of the trolley experiment, and the second part is the trolley is still going down the track, and you still have the same 5 people on the track that if you do nothing, it will hit the 5 people. But in this part of the experiment, you're actually on a bridge over the railroad track. And your choice is either now to push a person off the bridge onto the track, and you know 100% that it will stop the train and save the 5 people. So in this case, do you do nothing and let the train hit the 5 people, or push the person off the bridge and stop the train? So really, you go ahead and pause the video again and kind of decide what you'll do.
All right, so now that you've paused the video and thought of what you're doing, most people in this scenario choose not to push the person, because pushing the person and killing them, the act of pushing them, would be wrong, which is really a deontological approach. And again, there's always a minority of people that for the same reason they would pull the lever would push the person, that they're looking at more of a teleological approach. So this really, I think, helps illustrate the difference between those two. And I think a more interesting thing in all of this is that we, people, use different approaches based on the situation at hand. That most people in the first experiment use a teleological or consequentialist approach, whereas in the second experiment, most people use a deontological approach, saying it would be wrong to push somebody off the bridge. Yet the results are really the same on both. So to me, it's a kind of cool experiment or way to show that we all use different approaches depending on the situation. So this is really just an introduction to the 2 types of normative theories that are introduced in Chapter 2. In the next video, we're going to go over and go into more detail about teleological approaches and the 2 teleological approaches that they highlight in this chapter.